Just kidding.
So with MXs, apparently you could put them on
Stovetop.
stovetop.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be kind of cool.
They have like those wire things you can get.
Wait, come again?
You Chemex, you just keep it warm in the put on a stovetop.
Really?
Yeah. So even fire, you just put it on fire.
Yeah.
So you brew and then you...
Just want to keep it warm for a while.
How long can you keep coffee warm, though, before it just...
That's our next test. Next time on the Parousia podcast, we will be testing how long can coffee keep warm until it's meh.
Well, it's kind of like those Ember mugs, you know, those expensive mugs
Yes.
that have the battery in the bottom.
Yep.
The battery and the coil.
Yeah.
And they're pretty cool. But you'll see these reviews. People are like, I try to keep my coffee warm for, 2 or 3 hours and the battery. It's like, why are you trying to keep your coffee hot
warm
for 3 hours?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to brew it and drink it. Like,
Dealing with this thing.
all right, back. What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about our favorite brew methods. What's your go-to brew method? Why do you like doing it? What have you tried? You've probably tried more brew methods than either of us.
Yeah, you have a problem.
Yeah.
I do have a
This
problem.
is actually an intervention for you. This whole podcast.
What I get asked to do?
Christian, we love you, but you brew too many ways.
We're bringing it up as a podcast topic, but
Yeah.
really it's an intervention.
Well, yeah, no, you have tried a lot, and you probably dialed into the different ways you like to brew.
Yeah.
And you're pretty much an AeroPress guy.
Yeah, I mean, I end up doing a little bit of everything because
Yeah.
most of the time when I'm over here, we're brewing for at least 2 or 3 people. So
Right.
we'll do V60 most mornings, occasionally a Chemex when we have a big group of people. But if I'm just at home brewing in the morning, then I'll definitely do the AeroPress.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done pretty much since I started paying any attention to coffee, or like basically since I started drinking coffee at home.
So was that the first brewer that you purchased?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Because I didn't drink any coffee all the way through high school, college, and then
Wait, you went all through college without coffee?
yeah, I worked at UPS as a yard controller. I never drank coffee or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Hardcore.
then
Yeah, seriously.
when we moved to Virginia, coffee became a social thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's go out, because I was meeting all these new people that were not high school friends.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't have that much of a life in Arizona. Like, I just worked and went to school, and that was about it. And like hung out with a few friends that I had known for a long time.
Yeah, but you weren't like casually, let's go get coffee.
No,
Yeah.
that just wasn't part of what we did socially. Then I moved here, well, to Charlottesville specifically, and there's also much more of the eat local, drink local type of thing,
Yeah.
which I never really heard of that in Arizona. That was not a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that we didn't do, but it also wasn't something that we tried intentionally to do. Like, right, go to a local place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Phoenix is a massive metropolitan area. There's so many big corporate things for everything, right? It's like, yeah, it's just massive. You have big box stores for basically everything, no problem. Whereas in Charlottesville, it's definitely more a part of the specific culture of that city to have little, I won't say mom and pops quite, but kind of like that for pretty much everything. And especially for food and beverage, because that's a big area where mom and pops tend to have a big representation, is in food and beverage. So anyways, then I started doing that. That was the first time I drank coffee, period. And then, then I moved back to Arizona for a year, lived with you. We started going to Cartel, which is right down the street. And I started out drinking cold brew there. Then we started getting into Chemex, because that was kind of a social thing that you and I would do, is we would go and order a Chemex together. This is a perfect thing they brew a Chemex for you, and they give you two glasses, and it's just kind of a, you're sitting and sharing coffee. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having tea.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, coffee is a little bit more separate. Like, you get your thing, I get my thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're brewing tea, I'm not a big tea drinker, but it seems as if it's a little bit more of a communal thing. We're all drinking out of one pot, right? So Chemex is a little bit more of the coffee equivalent for that, which is fun. Actually, there aren't too many places that I've seen that do that, where you have a Chemex
They
and you
give
share
mugs.
it. Yeah, more than
Yeah.
one mug.
Well, I think in one of the places that we went to,
Alchemy.
yeah, he was gonna pour it for us, and we're like, no, like
It's kind of fun
yeah, it is.
Lamplighter
to do
would
it
do
for
that.
yourself.
Yeah,
They did a Chemex for it would be the price of 2 coffees pretty much, but
Okay.
like they'd always be like, yeah, you order a Chemex, that's one of their options. It'll be a 2 serving. So they'd give you the mugs and you just take the Chemex to your table.
yeah,
Nice.
it's kind of
Pretty
nice.
cool.
I like it. It feels like a moment.
Right?
You're like, it feels like ceremony kind of.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Yeah, so we did that, and then so I don't believe I ever made coffee at home really when I lived in the Tempe house.
No, I mean we could walk, short drive
Yeah.
to Cartel. That was the thing.
Dude, back in that day, I was a fiend. I would work all day, didn't really like my job that much, but I would look forward to either reading or writing at Cartel after work.
Yeah, because they're also open really late.
They're open really late, which
Yeah.
is, at least here, pretty rare. And I think, honestly, even in Phoenix, it was a little bit rare to have a
Yeah.
coffee shop that would be open past 8
Yeah,
or 9 maybe, but they were open at least until 10.
right.
What
So
time would you have a cold brew?
Late. Too late. I would be
That's
off at 6 or
crazy.
7 because I think I started work around 10 or 11, and then that was what I looked forward to. That was the main event of the day, was going, because Cartel is a very interesting place. It's
Yeah.
like very good for people watching. We were just talking about this the other day, but there's a very interesting cross section of society there. You have students, young working professionals, clean cut people, super hipster people. It's
Yeah.
a very interesting collection. And so it's a fun place to be and people watch.
Mm-hmm.
They have all of I don't know if you guys would ever do this where you worked, but at least later in the day, they would let the barista choose the music. So you got some funky stuff for sure.
Yeah, I do remember that. at
So like
Cartel.
sometimes it'd be obnoxious, but sometimes
It would be like Aborigine, like what's going on?
yeah. Or there's one guy would always play the same BBC DJ set,
Ah,
So you're like, oh, this guy's on bar. Like you already know because you
Yeah.
know what soundtrack is playing.
it's Eye of the Tiger on loop.
Yeah, right.
Bro, that's gotta be pretty cool. You get to work the bar at your own vibe.
Play your own little set list.
I think that is cool. I've never thought of anyone doing
It is,
that.
but you're playing your music for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So hopefully they like it.
Yeah, there was capacity of 100 people in Cartel.
Yeah.
It was a big cafe.
Yeah, it was a pretty big cafe. Yeah, so to your point, would go there pretty much every day. I wonder how much money I spent in a year at Cartel.
I mean, their cold brews were what, $5, $4.50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's cool going to a place that often because sometimes they just give you free stuff or discounted just because they're like,
You're a regular at that point.
yeah, you're a regular.
Yeah.
More than made up for it for the amount of money that
Yeah.
you put into that place. So did that for a year, never made coffee at home. And then when I moved back to Virginia again, then I don't remember the exact thought process, but I wasn't going to go out as much. Like a lot of the people that I had been friends with and gone out with before were no longer in Charlottesville. So I was a little bit more at home and just had my morning routine at home. So long story short, ended up with the AeroPress.
Dun, 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 dun.
Don't do it. It's funny. The first time I remember getting the AeroPress and making coffee with it, I'm reading the directions and me, I like to get things right. I'm not as much like, oh, let's just see what happens, experiment. Like I want to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're on the clock. So I'm like, okay, 2 scoops, grind it. Okay, 2 scoops means that you pour up to the 2. Okay, now what do I do? Stir it 10 times. They tell you how, I don't know if this is still in the AeroPress manual, but I'm pretty sure they would tell you to stir 10 times, like very specifically. And you wait a certain amount of time. It's like it's stressful and like technical. Now it's like, you do it in my sleep and you start to experiment with all these different ways of doing it. But AeroPress is always the way that's the only Yeah, until recently when I got the V60, that was the only way that I'd ever brewed or drank coffee at home.
So how long was that until you got the V60?
Like 5 or 6 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, a long time.
So that was the brew method.
That was the brew method.
Yeah.
Wow.
My dad has been a coffee drinker for longer, but for some reason I just never really got on that bandwagon.
He had drip coffee. What was his? Because prior to your bringing AeroPress to the house, what was the how do you make coffee?
He had a coffee maker.
Okay.
He had a Cuisinart, however you say it, coffee maker. Pretty nice. It would grind the coffee. I don't know why, it just never really occurred to me to drink the coffee that he made. So I kind of came to it separately.
Yeah.
From him. My mom was not a coffee drinker. None of my siblings drank it. Then, when I was in Arizona, I believe I had a conversation with my sister, and I was like, "Oh, this new thing, AeroPress." I don't know how really new it was. It's been out for a little while now.
Yeah.
New to me.
Right.
And so I'm pretty sure she ended up buying our first AeroPress.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think she actually beat me to it. But then it became the house AeroPress. And so then we started using it, and yeah, so I've never really messed around with a lot of the other brew methods.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the AeroPress is that it's very forgiving grind size wise, and I actually didn't have a grinder until a few years ago.
So you
I had a hand grinder.
Or hand grinder.
No, well, for the first period of time, I would grind it. I would grind the whole bag.
Oh, okay, like one of those commercial grinders.
One of those commercial
grind
grinders.
It all. Yeah.
Exactly. And then eventually I got a hand grinder because I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh, well, the big expense of a grinder is actually in the motor. So I can get a pretty good grind, consistent grind out of a hand grinder. And I'm not necessarily a super impatient person. I don't mind taking time to do stuff, especially coffee. That's fine. It's just part of my morning routine. So for me, the hand grinder wasn't that much of an inconvenience. It's just 2 minutes.
Right.
So I did that for a period of time, and then eventually we ended up getting the Parousia Encore, and never looked back. I mean, it is super convenient. Just be able to flip a switch and boom, it's done within 20 seconds.
Right.
So
especially as your coffee offerings have increased with how many people come to your house.
That too.
You're making 4, 5, 6 cups.
Yes, and that was another area when we'd have people over for dinner or just guests whenever throughout the day, it would definitely get out of control very quickly when you're trying to like hand grind. Yes. You're like, okay, coming. I'll have your coffee ready in 45 minutes after I make, 5 other people coffee.
You just had some giant forearm.
Yeah, exactly. My right shoulder is just ripped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the evolution of what we drank was very interesting. I mean, I remember being really into dark roast at the beginning.
Yeah.
And just thinking, why would anybody want... I always equated light roast coffee kind of with IPA for beer.
Oh.
Like, why do people want all this fruity, this, that, and the other in their coffee? It doesn't make any sense.
Taste that with IPAs.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying is that the
cleanse my palate just thinking.
Yeah, the comparison is not direct, but that's what I thought at the time.
Yeah, why? Why would you?
Why would you do that? I like chocolate.
Yeah.
I like caramel because that's always how dark roast is kind of presented, is with those flavors. And so we did dark roast, and then it got to a point where I think we tried a coffee that was, and just all about value, like in terms of it being affordable.
Yeah.
And then, and we always thought, like oily beans are good, right?
You gotta see that shine.
Yeah, I got to see the shine. But then I started to think a little bit more about it. I'm like, I'm not really sure if that makes sense. So I looked into that a little bit more. Then I tried a coffee that was still dark, but it was probably more on the dark side of medium. And I noticed a difference. I was like, this is actually pretty good. But for where I was at then, it was a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
So it was an occasional dalliance, not a daily drinker type of thing.
Yeah.
And so did that. And I don't know. So what I'm saying is, like, I started dark roast.
Yeah.
There with everybody else, and just kind of came to a place where I enjoyed lighter and lighter roast.
You had your awakening progressively.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, were you drinking dark roast black?
I would. I've always been a dark. Okay, no. I correct myself. At the very beginning, I did take a little bit of cream. Nathaniel, my brother, he used to dump a ton of cream in there, and I would like give him a hard time for it. And because then sometimes he would leave it for a long period of time, and the top layer would congeal into like this, cream. It's like got all that milk fat in it.
Yeah.
And you let it to cool, and it'll just kind of harden back up.
Wow.
Oh.
And I would give him a hard time, like, why are you, you're wasting the coffee, you're wasting your cream. Like, if you don't want the cream or you don't want the coffee, like, da da da. And he's like, I'll drink it. He would reheat it and drink it.
Oh.
He would actually do it.
Stir it up.
However he did it, man, he would reheat it and drink it. But we both eventually, he would just add less and less cream. And then I started below him, just because that's my taste preference.
Yeah.
Is I always like to taste things as they're meant to be.
Right.
If possible.
Yeah.
I just want to see what something has to offer. So I would take less cream, but it's still a little bit of cream. And then over the course of time, I just ended up drinking it black. And I'm sure that somewhat corresponded with drinking slightly lighter roasted coffee.
Right. Which makes sense because
does.
you're like, oh, there's something to taste here.
Yes.
I don't want to hide it with cream.
Right. And also cream, I think, complements darker coffee.
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit more of a match.
Right.
You know? Now here we are.
So from nothing through all college to getting Chemexes at a coffee shop, doing it itself with an AeroPress. And now you've been AeroPress like how long? 8 years now?
Since like 2014 or 15.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So 6 years.
That's your main
6 or 7
food.
years.
Like if you had 3 brewers in front of you and you're making a cup just for yourself.
Sometimes even when I'm here, I'll use the company AeroPress to do it, just because I don't know, it's just super good. Especially since I started doing the inverted method, I still feel like I can get. When I first started using AeroPress, I would always do the concentrated method. So you use a little bit more coffee, like you'd use maybe 25 to 30 grams of coffee to 30, 60. So like 120 grams of water, and then you get a concentrate, and then out of that you dilute it with hot water. So that's what I did for a number of years. Until fairly recently, like maybe within the last year and a half, I started doing the inverted, which is when you flip it over and you put more like 15 grams of coffee in.
Yeah.
And then you fully dilute it to the amount that you'll drink it at. So I do like 215 grams of water. So then when I press it, it's already diluted. But I find that the concentrate method, which I started doing, is very reliably mellow and pleasant. It's normally not unpleasant to drink, which when you're doing dark roast, you want, right? You're trying to like get as little of the bitterness out of coffee as possible.
Yeah.
So it was really good for that. When you're used to drinking bitter black coffee, when you find a method where you get a lot less of that bitterness, that's what you trend towards. And if you're adding like milk or cream to it, it's nice. But now, since we started roasting our own coffee, especially, I wanted a way to where I could use the AeroPress, but I find that with the concentrate method, you only get maybe 80% of the flavor. So it's mellow and pleasant, but it doesn't have quite as much of the complexity of the coffee.
It's a little muted.
Yeah, it's just a little bit muted and simplified, I guess you could say. It's a more simplified flavor. So when we're drinking our coffee, I actually want to be in tune with what we're roasting. Yeah. Right? I want to taste all that there is to offer. And so I find that with the full immersion method, you get pretty much everything that you get out of a straight up pour over. Pretty much all the flavors there. It's just easier for brewing 1 cup of coffee.
Yeah, I remember it was last week or the week before you made me a cup of coffee, the Bali AeroPress. And I remember taking a sip because we used to pretty much know what Bali tastes like.
Right.
And then like did a double sip, like, oh, wow, it's just a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
It's AeroPress.
Yeah.
It was nice.
But it had a good amount of the flavor in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't feel like I never feel like I'm missing out on anything.
Right.
Yeah, it's so reliable.
Yeah.
It's so easy too. Like we need to do an updated brew guide for the AeroPress. Yeah. Because I've even simplified it since we originally recorded. I think that was mine.
Yeah, that was
I recorded.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you don't have to bloom AeroPress because you're already doing full immersion. The reason you have to bloom V60 or Chemex is because the water drains through. So you're trying to prepare it, right? When you're doing full immersion, you are literally stirring it with a stick.
Right.
And then you're leaving it, and the water is not draining out. It's sitting there with the water and the coffee are melding for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So you don't need to bloom.
Oh, you just dump it in.
Yeah, you literally just dump it in. There's no special fancy pouring. You just pour the full amount in, let it sit for the full amount of time, flip it over, press it.
You mean osmotic flow, just little tiny circles?
No.
The AeroPress?
None of that,
just
man.
Dump it in.
Yeah. It tastes so good, but it's so simple.
Yeah, that is nice.
It is definitely less of an art. There is something fun, I find, about doing V60, Chemex, any of these pour over methods, is that it is fun to do a little bit more of that art form aspect of it.
It is part of the art. I kind of equate it even to like shaving, for example. There are ways to quickly shave.
Yeah.
If you, I just need to get in, get out, shave, as opposed to there's some of an art form to have a prepared process.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you can kind of feel like cool because you have this glass or the ceramic brewer that look a certain way.
Yeah.
And then you have the AeroPress, which is super dope. But it's like a plastic syringe looking thing.
Yeah.
So you can't feel quite as, crate and barrel.
Speaking of cool brewers, Christian, did you make it through college without drinking coffee? I'm still stuck on that.
Almost all of college.
Really? I was the only one that had to be wired the entire time. Wow.
I would have it occasionally. Every time I tried to make coffee at home, it tastes like trash. So it's like, only place I can get reliable coffee, go somewhere.
Okay, so when you were trying to make it at home, how would you make it at very early days?
Someone handed me a French press, but I didn't know anything about grind size. Well, I just threw boiling water in there and did something. But yeah.
And this was like pre-ground, or how would you?
Pre-ground,
Okay.
pre-ground.
Yeah.
So
what was your go-to spot? Because you went to VCU.
My go-to spot at VCU was either Alchemy on Broad Street or Lamplighter, which used to be downtown by campus. I started out drinking there. I was attracted because they had good latte art, their baristas. And then they had a Thai iced coffee that was pretty nice and sweet in the summer.
Sounds interesting, Thai iced coffee.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I don't know if I could drink it now. It's way too sweet.
Yeah.
But that's also where I found the first time people using Chemex. I'd see a Chemex. I'm like, what is that? And then the 2 cups, and people are sharing it at their table. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when did you decide I'm going to perfect my craft at home? You went from French press, going to college.
And then gave up on French press.
Okay.
Then I would have coffee occasionally because I couldn't afford to go to like a cafe like multiple times. So there'd be one day in a week where I wasn't too busy and I'd go to a cafe and do my work. And then, it wasn't until after I graduated actually, where I started perfecting coffee.
Nice.
I was shown the ways. People, they just made it simple. Like, shout out to David, from Seattle. Yeah. Now in Arizona, but anyways.
It is fitting that he's from Seattle.
Yeah.
Teaching the coffee ways.
He's like, bro, it's ratios. And then he just brought out the scale and was like, you can get these scales cheap. Or if you just find a consistent way with tablespoon measurements.
Yeah.
So, So then that's when I got into French press again and started making decent French press. But all my French presses kept breaking. So I was like, I'm going to get something that's indestructible. I'm getting a mocha pot.
There you go.
So
yeah, that's true.
It's like,
there's one way to describe mocha pot is more or less indestructible.
Yeah, it is.
Cast metal.
Yeah. Generations.
So I was mocha pot for about 2 years straight.
Wow.
Every morning.
Now how? Black or you?
Black. Okay. Not diluted.
Wow.
Just grow hair on my chest.
Yeah, seriously, that is a scalding hot shot of mocha pot.
Yeah.
Nothing like a good heart palpitation in the morning.
That's how his voice started to get deeper. Just mocha pots.
One time I had those 2 years I had a really busy morning routine. And so actually we found out we would just pre-grind the night before on our hand grinders and then seal it. But I forgot to put water in it. So I just flipped what we would do is we'd preset it on the stovetop. And then after I come back from a run cooling down, I would just flip the burner on and it would do its thing
Yeah.
in a timely way. But I forgot to put water in it the night before.
Oh no.
And one of my housemates was like, bro, this is like, it's getting really stinky down here. And it was the rubber gasket melting.
Wow.
Oh, no.
And then like, oh, it was crazy. So I had to throw that one out.
Yeah.
But then I bought another one. And then, yeah, mocha pot. And then the afternoon, my friend David was showing me like AeroPress. So I also was doing inverted AeroPress in the afternoons occasionally. But sometimes a double mocha pot in one day is pretty crazy.
That is.
I would do it, but it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I can barely handle mocha pot in the morning.
You said even you'll take shots of espresso down decently. But I remember you telling me you take a mocha pot and you feel the head rush.
I actually feel it in my heart.
Your heart. Wow.
I literally feel
Dangerous.
boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Like when you first sip,
Yeah.
not to sound overly dramatic,
Yeah.
but I just feel it. I don't know what it is. Is
Yeah.
it the overall amount of caffeine, or I don't know what it is about the way that mocha pot brews.
It's crazy.
But I drink coffee every morning, and I drink strong coffee. It's not like I'm drinking watered down crap.
And we've, with our espresso machine, we've just literally thrown back shots
No
of
problem.
coffee, and it's,
Yeah, I don't know what it is about mocha pot.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I would come over in the morning, and you would make me one. I'm just like, man, that is intense.
Yeah.
It's really unlike anything else
Hmm.
out of all the ways of brewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty unique. It has an even different vibe from espresso.
It does.
Oh,
It's
for
its
sure.
own unique. The taste is its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The preparation goes into it.
Right.
Mhm.
It's interesting,
Yeah.
and it can be done very incorrectly.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Very incorrectly.
You gotta think mocha pot is one of the gnarliest methods to make coffee if you don't know what you're doing.
Bro, that thing could
It's
explode.
dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
and
pressure,
dangerous too, pressurized. But just in terms of like burnt tasting coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what ends up happening. There's a certain time where the coffee is done. It needs to come out of the spout at a certain rate, and then like as soon as it's done coming out, as soon as even right before it starts making that gurgling sound, you need that means you're just pushing hot air onto already infused coffee beans, getting that burnt flavor and taste, smoky taste into it. So as you just watch that thing, as soon as coffee stops coming out, pour it straight in the mug.
Right.
Yeah. It's you have to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mocha pot game increased when either one of you told me to put hot water in the bottom first.
Oh yeah.
That was you?
That's another thing.
That's
Yeah,
a
so-
common misperception actually that gets thrown around, is that you want to put cold water
Right.
in. I don't know
Yeah,
what the
false.
logic is there. But
I would just put
False.
either cold or
False,
room
false.
temperature. Yeah. And then you told me put the hot water, and that changed my whole mocha pot experience as well. Because I was never much of a fan of it. I'm like, okay. But it was my grandpa.
Yep.
Just he would either go get coffee, or if he had to make coffee at home, preferred method would be mocha pot.
Yeah.
And I just remember always having this gritty, smoky, burnt taste to it.
I mean, it's like taking your coffee grounds and like, I know there's a chamber of water underneath, but it's like leaving your coffee grounds dry in that gasket over a fire
Yeah.
without water for a while because it's taking so long to build pressure.
right.
So like the faster you can do that, the less your fresh beans are getting cooked over a flame or
Yeah.
the heat.
Think of it that way. It's true.
Yeah. You want it to happen as soon as possible. I wonder if that's how your grandpa, being a Puerto Rican from New York, I wonder if that's how he drank mocha pot when he was younger.
Absolutely.
In the house, right?
Yep. Yeah. My grandma even mentioned that her dad had a mocha pot, and it's just on the stove. They already had a mocha pot on the stove.
Dude,
Yeah.
back to David, grandfather of Parousia coffee.
Wow.
Taught me how to roast. But anyways, David went to Puerto Rico
Yeah.
and was there, and then some families he was staying with, they were like, they gifted him a mocha pot.
Yes.
And
it's a
then
thing.
they're like, here you go, brother, this is yours,
Yeah.
because he just drank coffee with him all the time.
Yeah.
Because the whole cafe con leche, you need that strong, dark coffee, and mocha pot yields that. Even if you do a light roast coffee and you put it in a mocha pot, it's gonna come out like emboldened,
Yeah.
just based on the process.
Yeah.
So cutting through cream and sugar, yeah. So that's I pretty much started coffee. So that was my first taste of coffee, was mocha pot, and then his crazy 40-ounce thermos that he would have.
So was your At what point did your grandpa become a Starbucks guy?
I want to say it had to have been early 2000s, maybe late 90s,
Oh,
early 2000s.
So it's kind of when Starbucks was on the come up.
Yeah, kind of like their second wave, so to speak. They had their movement kind of in the 80s, early 90s, and then they just had this like boom, resurgence in brandy, and they redid the Cyrus or Siren, whatever it is. Yeah, so that's when he got in.
Okay.
And he was, like 3 times a day sometimes. And he would get a triple shot. So that could be 9 shots in one day.
whoa.
Sometimes he would get it like 8 o'clock at night, triple shot, and sleep like nothing.
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
It's a special skill.
Yeah.
It really is.
So, yeah, it was intense. And that's actually how I got my job at Starbucks, is because he would frequent a Starbucks so much. And I did like a 3-week stint at American Eagle when I was in high school. And I was telling him, like, I hate this job. He's like, work at Starbucks. And like the next day when he went in, he's like, my grandson wants a job. They all knew him,
Right.
And then they're like, yeah, let's have an interview. So that's how I got in Starbucks.
Do you remember which store that was?
Yeah, I was over on Bell Road in Arizona
Okay.
and like 99th Avenue, right on the other side of the 101.
So you went right over there,
Yeah,
and that's where you started.
that's where I started.
Wow.
Yep. Just because, he was he was literally on their wall. They had like a picture of their family tree of customers, and there's him with his cup.
They had a family tree of customers.
Yeah. So they kind of made like their regulars, and they made a family tree of like all their regulars.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I
So there's
that.
like one of, I don't know, there's like 40 pictures up there, and he was one of them.
That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
I haven't seen too many Starbucks that do that.
Yeah, it was nice. So, and then they loved him, so it was kind of an easy, nepotism maybe, I don't know.
Nepotism.
Just vicariously through him as a customer.
Listen, families are helpful. Like if you
Yeah.
have an employee and you really like them
Mhm.
and they vibe well with the company, a lot of times you just keep mining the gold shaft.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? That's what I find
Yeah.
sometimes is that if you find somebody that you like, chances are that people that they get along with or family members will also be along that same vein.
All right.
So were you drinking coffee at home previous to that?
No. I would like if he would go to Starbucks, I would get like a Frappuccino, right? Or just something very sweet like a white mocha. But no, I wouldn't drink coffee at home at all in high school. And then it wasn't until I got into college with a couple of people that I lived with, they would have coffee, and that became a thing. And that just became, at least for my experience of college, the stereotypical go study at a cafe. The Gold Bar in Tempe was one of them. So, you had to patronize, just by sitting there, you had to buy something. So that's how I got into coffee, just going
Yeah.
to different study places. There's also, it wasn't Extreme Bee. There's Extreme Bee in Tempe. That was also open. It was to like midnight, I think.
Yeah.
Super late. Gold Bar is open kind of late. And there's one that closed down off of University and Mill Avenue that was like a 2 a.m. like coffee spot.
Whoa.
And it was like right next to some of the dorms you could walk to. So it just became a hangout spot / after Mill Avenue sober up, I guess. I don't know. The business model failed because they shut down, which I don't know how. There's a million students.
Right.
So that became kind of the introduction of my just regular occurrence to cafes.
I love coffee shops that are open late.
Yeah, it's great.
Makes me sad when they close at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Based on some of the coffee shops that I've been to, I'm like, man, that's just when the party is starting.
Yeah, that's true.
Just people going and
Well, Extreme B, I mean, literally they have like a piano player just come in at like 10 o'clock at night and just jam.
love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
So it's kind of cool. It's
Wow.
kind of cool. I didn't start brewing at home until, when did I really start brewing at home? It must have been not that long ago, really, not 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I would just go out, go to coffee shops. Even when I, graduated and then got into, the mortgage industry, I would just have appointments at coffee shops.
So there's no need to make coffee at home.
Right.
Oh,
It would be
okay.
constantly. And then I met my wife at a coffee shop. So it's just always out at coffee shops.
So you're either working at a coffee shop,
Yes.
studying out of a coffee shop, or working out of a coffee
Exactly.
shop. So
Yeah.
it just never got to the point where it made sense for you to brew at home.
No. And the few times that I tried other people's brew, because I also when I worked at Starbucks, you'd get discount on all their like merchandise. So they had like a discontinued French press that was already 20% off. And I got my discount on top of it. So it was like, it was an insulated one. It was really nice. For like $10. I'm like, all right. So I bought a French press. And then you also get a free pound of coffee by working at the company. So I'd always have coffee. And I just, same thing. My experience with French press, it was never good. It was just like the dark coffee with the improper French press method. It always tasted like, not good.
It's gnarly, dude, because it's also gritty.
Right.
It can be gritty.
It can be gritty. So I remember thinking like, oh, you don't, when you pour out your cup, like you don't pour all of it out because that's just the grit. That's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah. So my experience at home brewing wasn't anything to write home about. And I like the social aspect of being at coffee shops. Even when I wouldn't socialize myself, just being around other people. I'd be in my zone working or focusing on something.
Yep.
But you just felt kind of a little community. And I remember, even befriending people that were also working out of coffee shops. There's a real estate agent, this random architect that would work out of that same Starbucks. Mm-hmm. And then there's new coffee shops starting to pop up throughout the valley in Phoenix. You just go. I always like going to coffee shops. It's one of the first things that we did kind of as a group, like just go to coffee shops. I still want to do that, like as a coffee passport. Just go to all the shops in, 150-mile radius.
Yeah.
It's just a fun kind of day trip excuse to get out and explore and see what other people are doing.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun excuse to... Coffee is just the starting point for everything else.
Yeah.
So sure, you go for the coffee and you're hoping that the coffee is good, but then you see where people are located, what direction they've gone with for actually creating the cafe.
Somebody's opening the door and she couldn't get out. She's like, how do I move?
How do we get out of here?
Yeah.
Just everything about the coffee shop. It's all a form of expression of like why it's interesting.
Right.
So the coffee is just a starting point, but it's fun to see all the different directions that you can go in. Everything from a hole in the wall to place to some of these cafes, man, they're huge.
Yeah.
And they've really gone all the way with picking a spot out and going with a creative direction for the interior and
right. Yeah, all of that.
What's up, homie?
You still doing it?
Yeah. You're good.
You're live, baby.
You're on the air.
Come on.
Hey, what's up? Shout out, this is Nathaniel, Michael's brother.
Yeah.
That's right. Too bad we don't have another mic.
Yeah.
Could have a cameo. But the coffee passport. I love that idea.
Yeah. It's just fun to see what other people are doing, how they do it.
Yeah, for sure.
We found some pretty cool shops. A ton of mediocre shops. There are some really good shops as well. And it's going to help us even for our inevitable cafe to kind of see what kind of vibe we like. Customer experience. You get to see that a lot. We talked about that, having that conversation with everything could be on point, but just somebody who's just not pleasant or not engaging or trying to reach out in any way. You're just kind of puts a sour point.
Yep.
So
I know one thing I've noticed in cafes, which, when we come to that step, just curious how we'll handle it. But like, I've really liked the whole island setup of the barista. There's several shops that I've been visiting that have that island set up. So
like they're in the middle and you walk around.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it may not be as efficient, but having that transparency and seeing workflow, I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Ironclad has that. Three Ships has that. There's this one cafe we went to, another one in Norfolk. Remember that
There's a warehouse.
Warehouse.
Yes.
Yeah, the warehouse setup I think suits that pretty nicely. Versus just like you walk, deep into the store and then baristas in the shadows. Yeah. And then you just hear your drink order and you're like, oh, there's something about the whole island setup where you can see the process.
Yeah.
Which I think that's like what we like already at the farmer's market,
Right.
And then the idea with our trailer so far. So
to be as open as possible.
You see everything.
yeah.
There's nothing to hide here.
Nope.
Yeah.
And as we've just discussed, so much of what we've enjoyed about coffee in our own respective journeys is being a part of the process. It's not just the drink that you get at the end. It's being able to observe all of it, and who knows if you're that type of person, maybe talking to the barista or having some sort of interaction that way.
Yeah.
Being a part, even just observing what they're doing, you know, because a lot of people that are just getting into coffee, they kind of want to see, oh, I just bought this, or we hear that all the time at the farmers market.
Yeah.
I just got an espresso machine, or oh, I just got an AeroPress, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how you guys do it. Or oh, how do I do this? So when they can observe you doing all this kind of stuff, it's exposing them to something new.
Yeah.
It's going to shape
For
their
sure.
coffee journey.
Yeah.
So that's a fun part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're just in the back making hamburger or
Right.
fries.
Just
or
sending
something.
it through the hole in the wall. Like, don't worry about the process.
Right.
Use the end product.
Yeah.
Half the experience is seeing how it's prepared, and again, teaching someone how they can do it at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just being on point
Yeah.
in terms of cleanliness.
You have nothing to hide.
No, you have nothing to hide with your operation.
Right.
Right? Like your organization having a workflow that is suitable for higher amounts of volume.
Yeah.
Just being clean and on point in every regard. When you're completely surrounded by customers, it kind of
Just walking
demands
around
that of
the
you.
island
Mm-hmm.
the whole time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, it suits the coffee experience for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say is now because we brought this up earlier, all the different brew methods you have tried. I mean, you've tried quite different, pour over methods,
Yeah.
immersion methods.
Mm-hmm.
So what is okay, let me ask you a twofold question. You're just making a cup of coffee just for yourself.
Just for myself.
What's your go-to? And then if you're like, okay, I got to do 2 cups, what's your go-to?
Man, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Recently I've been going for just espresso.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just espresso.
Yeah.
Just espresso. Yeah. Just
Just a casual espresso.
Just espresso. Yeah.
Gets up in the morning. What should I do? Maybe I'll just have an espresso.
Yeah. I just like the workflow. And maybe this
pretty
is
dope setup too, which is nice.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I'm running a single boiler espresso machine, so like the workflow is different from like a heat exchanger or dual boiler.
Mm-hmm.
So like the other day I made 4 lattes in a row, but it took me like 20 minutes because there's the steps you have to take to ensure your boiler doesn't,
Right.
get wrecked. And you have water in it, and you have the time for it to come up to temp, and then you got to grind and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I've found that like if it's just me, I appreciate the workflow just by myself, maybe one other person. After that, I get kind of tired.
Yeah, it's a long time. 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's tedious.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for 4 drinks.
Yep.
And the first person's done before you get to start to enjoy yours.
Yeah, by the time I sit down, I'm just like,
Wiped.
too tired for my latte art to be any good. But and then for 2, 2 I will do because I want to enjoy it with someone. I'd probably do a pour over.
Okay. Now, out of all the pour methods out there, because you have the Kalita, the Chemex, the V60, what's your go-to?
I really like the Chemex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the longest time, you're a Kalita guy.
Yeah, for
I
the
always
longest time.
associated the Kalita with you.
Yeah, and then some friends gifted me a Chemex because they watched me make like 9 or 10 pour overs with just a 185 Kalita.
They had sympathy.
Yeah.
And so they bought me
Also 20 minutes.
an
Right.
8-cup Chemex.
Nice.
So I could knock out 4 or 5 drinks if I really squeezed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chemex is a nice crowd pleaser. And I've just found that I enjoy Ethiopian coffee or an African coffee with a Chemex more than I do with the Kalita.
Any idea why?
I'm not really sure.
We went to that roaster outside, was it Norfolk? Somewhere.
Newport News.
Newport News, where they even mentions.
What's it called? Canvas coffee?
Okay.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Canvas
Yeah.
coffee? Yeah.
Right? And wasn't he telling us like this bean or roast is better for this method?
Yeah, because we wanted a pour over, and then we were like looking at his options of beans, and then we're like, why can't we get both this way? And he's like, no, this tastes better with a
Yeah.
Chemex over a V60, say.
It would be nice to take a deeper dive into that because I am wondering because from the outside looking in, you're like, they're kind of the same. It's still a pour over. It's still kind of the paper. There's still a little bit of a difference in grind size, I guess.
Right.
But the flow rate, depending on the grind size, should be similar. But there is enough difference where that person, the roaster of the establishment, said, no, this is the preferred method. You should do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think grind size has something to do with it because they say the smaller, in general, with coffee, the smaller the grind size, the better extraction, right? The more you're able to extract out of the bean. When you do Chemex and you do a big Chemex, kind of by definition, or not by definition, by virtue of how much coffee you're doing and the thicker filter, it kind of forces you to go coarser in the grind size.
Yeah.
Right? So you think right there, well, if you're having to make the grind coarser to brew within a certain amount of time, then you're probably still getting a good enough extraction, but you're not getting as good of an extraction as you might with a smaller brewer that allows you to go finer.
Yeah.
With your grind size.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is though.
No, that's, yeah.
We should try it. We should try, some of our coffee with the different pour methods and blind taste. That's usually one of the ways you're going to get it done.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in a couple of weeks, I'll be probably daily driving a V60.
Yeah. Nice.
Like right now, my only experience with the V60 is when I'm serving at the market or if I come over to y'all's house.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was a Chemex for 2 years straight, every day. Gab and I, Chemex. And then now that I have access to Parousia's V60. Actually, no. I had access to Parousia's V60, and I like the red one, so I bought the red one.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm daily V60. But I still will do Chemex occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
V60 is good for the 2 to 3 people that we're normally brewing for.
Yeah. Well, we were doing 25 gram. I was doing 50 gram Chemexes for 2 people. Because remember, I was selling only 1 cup a day.
Uh-huh.
So it'd be a 25 gram cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big boy
It's
cup.
a big cup. Yeah. That's a lot.
That's a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just once.
Yeah.
Now I'm 30 grams a day. No, 40 grams a day. 20 in the morning.
I was used to my measly 15 grams. I come over here, I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
these guys are like from Texas or something.
Yeah, let's go.
It's massive.
Yeah, I was doing 15 for a while, and then the espresso machine, my basket is 18. So I was like, oh, might as well raise my pour over to 18.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, so I'll
Does
do
make
20. When you come over in the morning,
Yep.
if I'm making it, I'll do 40
Yep.
grams.
Yep.
20 both.
Because we got these cups.
Yep.
Gotta fill a cup. Sad if you have a cup that's half full.
This thing's going to die any minute.
Okay.
It's saying battery low.
Okay.
So
Maybe we should call it.
by virtue of this, it's telling us the podcast has reached its limit.
It's a sign.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Have you noticed that we just got to figure out a way to sign off? Is it going to be like an outro, or is it going to be
You just have to have a line to say
yeah,
that just gives it closure.
right, like the French fin,
El fin.
le
fin.
fin,
El fin. It's like
Yeah,
Spanish.
el,
El fin.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's good.
Okay. Is there anything else we want people to know?
Okay, so AirPress, Chemex, except for espresso, if you have a dope setup, E60.
Yep.
That's our favorite brew methods.
Yep.
I think that's kind of the point of the podcast, is talk about that.
Right.
What I will like to do next time, maybe not next podcast, but a iteration of podcast, is like live reactions to the different methods. Take like our Bali, for example, and do a Kalita, do a French press, do a V60, do a Chemex, and we could do it right here.
Okay.
And just
Oh, dude, that'd be sweet.
it'll be awesome. And then just really, we have enough of the boilers to do it all kind of at the same time, or most of them.
Yeah.
Especially with the immersion method with the French press. By the time the V60 and Chemex are done, that will be done.
Yeah.
So that'd be cool.
Okay.
To kind of have like a live reaction to that.
Yeah.
So
I dig it.
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. See you next time.
Adios. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.